Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tristan Cabello. I'm the Associate Director for the Master of Liberal Arts at the Johns Hopkins University, and I'll be your host for tonight's event. We have entitled tonight's event, Life After the MLA Program. This is the second event of our 60th anniversary celebration. We have events scheduled later this year, a book club, a series of mini seminars that you'll be able to attend for free, and also our usual colloquium at the end of the year, among many other events. For our first event, we discussed the history of the program with our faculty. And for this one, we are turning to our alumni to learn more about how the program impacted their lives and impacted their careers. Next slide, Alex. So when you join the MLA program, you are joining a program that is 60 years old. So it goes without saying that the MLA family is quite a large one currently. We graduate between 30 and 50 students every year. But back in the 70s and in the 80s, the MLA program was graduating hundreds of students every year. So it goes without saying that today we won't be able to talk about everybody. But what I wanted to do before we start the conversation with our alumni is to showcase and pay a tribute to some of our most famous, notable alumni. Now, remember that for most of its life, the MLA program was an on-ground only program, no online classes. So the faces that you'll see today are probably very familiar faces if you are from the Baltimore or Maryland area. What's always striking to me as I do more research about the event, about the history of the program, and I learn more about our alumni, is that there is one thing that really links all the people in the MLA together, the faculty, the alumni, the current students, and it's really our commitment to humanistic values, to social justice, both on the theoretical side, that is through philosophy, history, literature, but also very much on the practical side, through politics, through activism, through education. And so that's true for our alumni in the 60s, the 70s, but that's also very true for the alumni on the panel today. Next slide, Alex. The first person that I wanted to talk about here is Dr. Catherine Gira, who got her MLA in 1972. Catherine Gira was the president of Frostburg State University for more than 20 years. And for those of you who are not familiar with Maryland, Frostburg State University is actually the only university of the university system of Maryland that's in the Northwest region of Maryland. And that's a region that's historically has been underserved. And so what Catherine did during her tenure as president there, that she made sure that the university was also used as a cultural center for local communities. And she brought plays, operas, musicians, singers to the university to make sure that the local communities around the university had access to that culture. She was also very big in civic engagement, and she always made sure that all of that was integrated into the curriculum. Next slide. Barbara Hoffman is also, if you have lived in Baltimore in the last couple of years, a very familiar face. She was a member of the Maryland State Senate for many, many years. She was originally an English teacher, and she was one of the defendants for public schools in Baltimore. She always made sure that in her 20 years tenure, that public schools in Baltimore were generously funded. Next slide. Jack Lapides also got his MLA in 2001, and Jack was a very famous state senator in Maryland. He served for more than 30 years, a very progressive man. When he started his career in 1963, he was one actually of two senators who proposed a legislation that would ban restaurants, theaters, and cinemas from barring entry to African Americans, essentially disaggregating the city. And it's also very funny that Jack got a degree from the Johns Hopkins University in 2001, because it feels as if he had been fighting the university for more than 30 years. When the university was largely expanding in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, especially hospital, and buying more property, um, uh, Jack was always making sure that whatever building the university was buying, that they would preserve their historic traits, their historic nature. And so he was constantly in conversation, discussion, very heated discussions with the university. Next slide. Mary Pat Clark is also a very well-known figure in Baltimore, and she received her MLA in 1991. Mary Pat Clark was the first woman elected president of the council in Baltimore. And she was also very instrumental in the 70s. She was one of very few Democrats who realized that it was not okay to have an all-white council, city council, where the majority of the people in Baltimore were African Americans. And so what she did is that she really pushed many African American leaders to get elected in Baltimore, and essentially here again, disaggregating the city council. She was also a teacher. Next slide. And so one of the person that Mary Pat Clark tried to push forward was, or is, our current US representative, Kwesi Mfume. Kwesi Mfume was just re-elected in the last election, and he serves the area where Johns Hopkins is located in Baltimore. He was the president of the NAACP for many, many years too. Next slide. And last but not least, and here this is probably my bias as an historian, I wanted to showcase Gil Sandler. Gil Sandler, if you have lived in Baltimore in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, you know him. He was a public historian before the word ever existed. And he's written many, many books about the history of Baltimore. More importantly, this is somebody that you'll see often on TV, on radio shows, discussing the history of Baltimore. And his books and his podcasts are available online if you want to watch them and to read them. So those are the alumni that from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that I wanted to talk about. And now I want to turn to the recent alumni. If we can go back to the full screen here. And I want to welcome them, and I am going to introduce them all to you first. Thank you all for joining us today. We have first Dr. Lisa Serice. Lisa is a 2019 MLA graduate, and she's also a 2022 graduate with a PhD in education from the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Lisa does a lot of things. She's a teacher, a musician, a healthy living instructor for the YMCA in the greater Houston area, and she joins us from Houston. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here. It's good to see you. We have also Tiffany Nez, who's joining us tonight. Tiffany graduated in 2021. She is currently the Assistant Director of Utah Valley University Honors Program, and she joins us from Utah. Hi, Tiffany. Good to see you. Carlos Littles is with us today too. Carlos is a researcher with many interests spanning from our media to indigenous studies. He graduated in 2022 and is now working as a collections and archives manager at his local county museum, and he joins us from the state of Virginia. Hi, Carlos. Shruti Matthews is with us today too. Shruti graduated from the MLA in the summer of 2022. She's currently studying for a master's in classical Indian religion at the University of Oxford, and she joins us from Oxford, England tonight. Good to see you, Shruti. Brian Eckert is with us tonight. Brian graduated with the MLA in the summer of 2022. He's currently pursuing a Master of Fine Arts degree from Naropa University. And he hopes to continue his education in the future to become a college professor. He joins us from Colorado. Hi, Brian. And finally, last but not least, we have Florence Olivia Jeunesse, who is currently a PhD student. She graduated with the MLA last year. She is currently studying law at the University of Durham in England. And Florence is also well known for her social media platform, The Sis, where she promotes social justice, feminism, and teaches us how to have conversations about violence against women. And she joins us from Montreal tonight. Hi, Florence. Nice to see you. So nice to see you all, guys. And so the conversation that I wanted to have first with you is really to showcase the diversity that we have in our program. And so it's very much a diversity of backgrounds, but also a diversity in our intellectual trajectories. And Lisa, I wanted to start with you. You are doing something that more and more students who are joining the MLA program are doing. They're testing the water and they're trying to see if this is something that they really want to do long term, i.e., why not getting a PhD after that? And so, Lisa, this is exactly what you did. You started with the MLA. You wanted to try this out to see if graduate school was for you, if this is something that you wanted to do long term. And you decided to apply for a PhD at the Johns Hopkins University. And you graduated very recently with your doctorate in education. Can you talk a bit more about how the MLA program helped you in your PhD studies?
Yes, I can. Actually, I can pinpoint really two specific ways that my MLA boosted my doctoral studies. And the first was that experiencing the diversity of the MLA courses before funneling down to my narrow research topic really primed me for success, because doctoral studies are very narrow, laser focusing on one teeny tiny topic for your research, almost to the point where you begin to lose perspective that not everyone in the entire world is spending almost every waking moment, moment thinking about what your topic is. And the second thing that contributed to my success, I think, in my doctoral studies was the way the MLA program trained me to think about and synthesize information. In my doctoral cohort, we were all required to use ecological systems theory to situate the factors of our problems of practice into the micro, meso, exo, macro, and chrono systems. And so, in a nutshell, improvement science requires understanding how contributing factors to big problems interact with one another. And I can think of no better preparation for this task than the MLA, because a humanities education really probes the diverse, complex, and even problematic events of the past, and it provides insight into the world we live in, which gives us the tools to imagine and create the future. So when we expand our knowledge of human culture, which the MLA program was masterful at, it helps us to understand what binds us together, differentiates us from one another, who we are, what it means to be human, how we relate to one another. And because my research is very problem focused in mental health and well-being, I feel the MLA really gave me an advantage over my colleagues whose master's degrees were in a single discipline. So
Yeah, absolutely.
That really helped.
Yeah, and that's very important also to tell the audience here is that the MLA program is very much about broadening your perspective. You are not focusing on one single topic. You're trying to get perspectives from many different disciplines and many different topics to inform your own research, right? And so that's very also different from other masters, but also very much different, as you mentioned, Lisa, from studying in a PhD program, right? Very cool. Tiffany, we have many educators in the program. In fact, I think this is the largest segment of the population. And so you work as an educator, as a higher ed administrator. How has the MLA helped you in your work?
It's helped me in several ways. One, one of the biggest catalysts for me doing the MLA program was I do teach, and I teach at a lower level here at the university, and I wanted to increase what I wanted to teach. I wanted to have, I have my own class that I wanted to teach, but I didn't have the credentials to get that done. And I wanted to, and the MLA program allowed that to happen. It also, participating in the MLA program, it is, like Lisa said, it is so diverse. It allowed me to take the classes that I wanted to take that would fit the research I was already doing. I also am planning on submitting for my prepare my PhD program in the fall of 23. And so I knew that the MLA program would, help me get that done as well.
Yeah.
So it's, teaching it, I teach the students in the honors program, they have to write a thesis, and it's about a 25 to 30 page thesis. And I wanted to go through that process myself in a more rigorous way, so that I wasn't just teaching them how to do it, but I knew it for myself. And so it gave me the confidence that I needed to not, to be able to teach without having my PhD yet, but have the respect from my colleagues. And that has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's exactly like the methods that you are using or that you are learning in the MLA program are also probably very useful in your teaching right now.
Yeah.
So especially that part that we focus in the later part of the MLA, that is the research part. The last couple of courses that you will take, you will be focusing on your on research. Carlos, one thing that still very much impresses me with your trajectory in the MLA program is that you finished the program super fast. And so usually what happens in for most students is that they finish the program in 2-3 years. You have 5 years actually to complete the program. But what we're getting more and more questions from students who want to be full-time students and want to finish the program fast. Can you talk more about your experience and how was that manageable? How did you do it?
Sure. That was a strange opportunity that I had, where I was able to simply build a schedule, have a rigid schedule, and go through I had to check in every day, and make sure that all my ducks were in a row to be able to go through it that way. Everything had to be very, very regimented in that way. One thing that I wasn't expecting to happen was that I would lose out. I felt that I would lose out on the sense of connectivity, where in a longer, if I'd done it in a longer setting, I would be able to experience these things more with my cohort. But though I anticipated that happening, it didn't really come into fruition. I was still able to stay in contact. I was still able to network. I was still able to do all the things that I would if we were on campus during a longer term.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. Thank you, Carlos. Brian, you are also part of a growing segment of the population in the MLA program, in the MLA students population. It's students who continue their studies with another master's. And so you graduated with the MLA, and then you went on to get another master's. Can you talk more about this? Why and how did that work?
So my original goal, when I was an undergrad, was to pursue an MFA, which is what I'm doing now, right away, and then also get another master's, a Master's of Arts in English or something serious, something similar, because I thought that would be necessary for a PhD program. But then in my last year of undergrad, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and then COVID started shortly afterwards. So I moved back in with my parents, and I couldn't really do much other than online things in general. So I knew I wanted to continue my education, but I wasn't sure about online schooling just in general. But once I looked through the course offerings, it was a really easy choice, and it's really helped me a lot in just building up general academic skills like writing, researching, things like that. So I feel really confident going into my thesis for this program.
Mhm. Great, great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Shruti, you are also part of a growing population in US, that is those students who are studying from abroad. And so you were abroad during most of the time that you were in the MLA program, and you are currently also abroad. Can you talk a bit more? I mean, we are getting a lot of questions also about this. Is it really possible to study from out of the country? And this is absolutely possible, but how did you manage it?
Well, I felt like I was actually ahead of the curve on this by a year because prior to COVID, not many people were studying online. But then after COVID happened, it suddenly became the norm for so many students. But
Mhm.
we were sort of discussing this earlier before the panel began. The MLA has sort of crafted this and designed a program to really suit online needs.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, doing that before sort of everybody else was doing it just meant that I felt very comfortable in this strange new world that was kind of dawning for everybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And I think as well, actually having this online format makes the program accessible to such a broad range of circumstances and people, because for me, I did it from Sri Lanka. But I'm also a mother, and I had just had my second son. He was about 6 months when I started. But as a mother, it also meant that I could do my classes, I could pace it, according to my needs, and I could still access a very rigorous education, but just with less pressure of perhaps having to go to a full-time course on the ground.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Shruti. Florence, with you, I wanted to talk. We're also getting those questions a lot. Your first language is French, but you speak English fluently. You are from Quebec. And one question that we get often in the program is this okay if I'm not a native speaker of English to study in the MLA? I know this is research intensive. I know this is reading intensive. I know this is writing intensive. And I have to say, all of our non-native speakers are doing very well in the program, but this is usually a questions that we get from students whose primary language is not English. Can you talk more about this, Florence?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, just as a preface, I was born and raised in a French Canadian family.
Yeah.
So I only learned English when I was 20. So when I took a leap of faith to do my university degrees in English only institutions. And in 2019, I left McGill Law School to study in the MLA at Johns Hopkins. And it became really clear to me on my first day in the program that this was by far the best decision I have ever made in my entire life. But upon arrival at Johns Hopkins as an international student, I really had the immense privilege of having faculty members accommodate me in a way that would make me feel comfortable. So as we know at Johns Hopkins, but most particularly in the MLA, students come from different backgrounds. And as a Francophone, the MLA program really showed me that it's possible to successfully build bridges between different cultures, community, and languages.
Yeah.
So, of course, with the help of generous faculty members, I felt comfortable enough to occupy a space that was offered to me in the English-speaking world,
Yeah.
a place that, I was once scared of entering. And now I'm proud to say that as a French-speaking international student, the MLA really supported me in my first steps through an academic career in the English-speaking world. So
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, France, for sharing that. The second topic that I wanted to talk about with you is about the program itself. What were the highlights of your time in the program? Like, how did the program really impact your lives? If you had to describe really the program to a prospective student, what would you say? What was the most important point to you? Who wants to start here? Lisa, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think Getting back to what Shruti was saying, most of us at this stage of the game are working, we're partners, spouses, maybe parents, and the online flexibility is a huge draw because you can still know you're doing something incredibly rigorous, but at the same time, you can fit it within the parameters of a life that's already ongoing. Also, another draw that I didn't think about really until I started the MLA, because this was my first online experience. I had only done brick and mortar before,
Yeah.
was that the online feature meant I'd be discussing these really deep and interesting topics with people from all over the world,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
really that, in addition to the fabulous courses, just talking to like the diverse group we have here added a richness and flavor to the experience that I'm not really sure happens as well, maybe as functionally if you're in the zip code of the university that you could
Yeah.
attend. And I think that the MLA, it just surprised me how much it fostered a genuine and deep understanding of individual and social justice, an authentic appreciation and admiration for difference, and really a recognition of beauty in its many forms.
Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely right here, and that's something that I tell a lot to students. I mean, when you are participating in a discussion board online, everybody gets to talk, right? Everybody. There are still, sometimes people who dominate the conversation, but it's not as strong as it is in the regular classroom, right? Or also on the other end, I was a particularly shy student, when I was a graduate student, and just like Florence was discussing before, I was shy to speak because English was not my first language, right? And I think if I had taken classes online back in the days, I mean, of course, I would have probably, shared my opinions a little bit more often. So there are those barriers here online that completely fall off, right? Anybody else who wants to share their opinion? Tiffany.
I am a first generation student in my entire family. And so, participating in the MLA program, it really gave me a confidence that it allowed me to test the waters to see what I was capable of in an environment where I felt really embraced. I was not so afraid of the online aspect of it. However, because I was participating in the program when COVID started, I had, the classes were so well formatted already. The discussion board, the way that it was set up, and the way that we were able to still be a community with, with our fellow classmates that we didn't know. I was able to help my university, in my honors program, use some of those techniques because it was just so well done. And I didn't feel like I was, teaching myself. It did feel like I was involved with classmates, and, we found each other on LinkedIn, we found each other on Instagram, and, we created our own little class, that relationship that you would have, face to face, but, I didn't feel like I was giving anything up. It made me stronger the way these classes were already formatted. And now we're all using them, and like we were talking about it, I am grateful that I was able to do the MLA program, that it was made, it was made for me.
Yeah, I'm very grateful so that you mentioned this, Tiffany, because that's a very important point here. I'm a first gen student too, first gen college student too. And I want to put, the emphasis here on, of course, Johns Hopkins is a top school. It's an elitist school, but the program is very friendly. The MLA program is very friendly. And so compared to, I don't know what was your experience, in other programs, especially at the PhD level, but I went to a PhD program that was highly competitive. And so of course people were friends, but there was some competition right there, to get grants, to get published, and so on and so forth. That has never been my impression in the MLA program. In the MLA program, students are here to make communities, to build communities, to help each other. They're constantly peer reviewing each other. They constantly give feedback to each other. It is a very friendly environment in a top school, right? Which is very uncommon, I have to say, which is very uncommon. Anybody else who wants to share something? Shruti, please.
Yeah, I would just add to that by saying another thing that is extremely rare about this program is that you get a chance to generalize at master's level, whereas ordinarily you would be specializing, right?
Yeah.
And in this, you get that opportunity. And so while you're learning, depending on what modules you pick, you will be, learning various bits of content, whether it's history or philosophy or whatever it might be. But you're also getting armed with a sort of toolkit, a
Yeah.
set of lenses perhaps that allow you to really look at anything in the world and just to
Yeah.
be a more interested and thus more interesting person, because you pick up all these bits of knowledge that really just make, I don't know, life more enjoyable. You may enjoy art a bit more, or you
Yeah.
may be able to talk, knowledgeably on pop
Yeah.
culture. And there are all of these wonderful things that, you pick up. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm so grateful for it.
yeah, you're totally right. And so, a question that you may have gotten from your friends and family, all of us here, I've gotten it too. It's what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with a master in liberal arts, or a master in history, or a master in anthropology, right? And so, what you find out is that most other degrees, they have a shelf life. Say, you get a degree in something technical or communication or social media, whatever. In a year from now, what you have learned is already obsolete. When the skills that you learn and that you acquire in the MLA programs are lifelong skills: critical thinking, writing, communication, synthesis, how to synthesize, how to read a long book in 2 hours. That's a skill, that's a skill that you need to acquire at some point or another. So the skills that you learn in the MLA programs are really the skills that will enable you to learn anything, right? And so that's something that I think is very important. Carlos, you wanted to say something, I think, about this? No.
Yeah, I wanted to add something.
Florence, please.
What you were saying is something I really valued in the MLA, is that you're not just taught, the material, but also invited to think through it, to engage, criticize, and develop current theories and arguments in a way that, for me at least, it allowed me to not only flourish as a theorist, but as, future agents of social change and political change. So I really am grateful for that.
Yeah. Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I just want to say, we're going to keep on this conversation in a minute, Florence, but I just want to tell the audience that they can ask any questions that they want through the chat box to any of the participants, and I'll make sure that I ask the questions at the end of the event. Florence, why don't we keep talking about this? I want to also to talk, and this is the third topic here that I want to share with you. How has the MLA program benefited your professional career? You are all involved, in one way or another, on social justice, humanistic values, how you integrate this into your work. And so, Florence, you are building a social media platforms right now. It's called the CIS, and you've been featured all over Quebec, I feel. So you were named one of the top 10 influencer in Quebec. You were also recently featured at what I think is the #1 talk show in Quebec just this past Sunday. So what you are basically doing is translating all the theory that you have acquired in the MLA program, feminist theory, mainly gender studies, and you are sharing it with the world. And quite frankly, you are changing mentalities. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so exactly as you were saying, for me, the MLA really taught me the importance of transforming theory into praxis, translating ideas into concrete actions for the betterment of society, and notably one of what that means is, contributing to the democratization of research and of knowledge. So in my personal life, for me, this meant continuously seeking novel ways of achieving widespread awareness on feminist issues. And as we know, feminist theory and social justice can be difficult subjects that are not necessarily accessible to everyone, especially those who don't study it on a day-to-day basis. And so what I've learned from the MLA is actually that there is always a way to make learning accessible to everyone. So that's why early in the COVID-19 pandemic, stuck at home but determined to make a change, I created with my sister a TikTok channel specializing in informative, accessible videos pertaining to gender inequality. And within a year of its existence, the community around this channel has grown to almost 500,000 followers from all over the world, exchanging views on feminist issues. And notably, one concrete example of what democratization of knowledge can do, I would have never, imagined that in my wildest dreams. Actually, my sister and I created a tutorial. We popularized a signal for help. So it's a gesture that can be used by those at risk of abuse. And it has gotten 20 million views, but most importantly, 2 women last year were rescued in the US where they used this hand signal. And so their life were saved. And I think also, this more particularly on the professional level, for me, it has allowed me to work with organizations that I've dreamed of working with since I was little, such as the UN Women, Canadian Women's Foundation, and Plan International. And I certainly have the MLA program to thank me for helping me become the activist and scholar that I am today. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Florence. That's and just like I told you, I mean, you were great on that show on Sunday. So congratulations on that. Carlos, you also presented your research in many different venues. I mean, which is also very impressive for a master's student. So you did a presentation at the MLA in Baltimore. You did a presentation at the Gillespie. How did that happen? How did you feel about this? Did you learn anything in the MLA program that actually helped you share your research?
Sure. Actually, the MLA was the foundation for all of that research that I was doing. I was able to expand in different ways that I really didn't have the freedom to do so before my undergrad. I could always look at a different source, but it would feel awkward if I brought that in. But here it was a welcoming space where I was encouraged to ask different questions, encouraged to look into different techniques and bring those methods in. So I think the program prepared me in a way to be able to present my research, synthesize my research, and then be able to do the things that I was doing and give it and deliver it differently.
Yeah, very good, very good. And Brian, can you talk about your experience too? Because Carlos and Brian were presenting recently also at our national conference, the Association for the Graduate Liberal Arts Program. And we've had many students over the years presenting at this conference that were very successful. Some of them even won awards. And Brian, you presented, just like Carlos, a very powerful, very good paper. Can you talk more about this experience?
Yeah, so the conferences that I've presented at so far have been great, just in general, but the MLA really kind of helped me start this research that I always knew that I wanted to do eventually, but like in undergrad and then even afterwards, I didn't have a very good research foundation. But just through my first couple semesters in the MLA program, I learned a lot of new techniques and just how to use sources better, like the online resources. And yeah, it was a really enjoyable experience to take classes that were related to my research while also doing research. So the assignments were things I wanted to read and that were going to be on my bibliography. And I never really imagined I would have that opportunity, especially not in undergrad. Yeah, it was a really great experience.
Yeah, and just to clarify for all the students who are watching us today, you are not forced to do research in the MLA program. You can also just explore, different aspects of the social sciences, the humanities. It's really up to you. But if you want to do research, at the end of the program, once you have taken all of your core classes, all of your electives, you can take a research method course and also a graduate project course, which will help you design your research. And most of our students have been very successful in publishing their research, presenting their research in conferences. So as I always tell students, it's a good thing to get a good grade in your courses in the MLA program. When you get the validation outside the MLA program, it really means, you know, the research is good. So Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit more about how did the MLA program impact your professional life?
So it definitely helped with getting into the doctorate program. And I think, though, that what helps me most professionally is that this program was so personal for me. It trained me to the discussions that we had, the interactions we had, the interactions with the coursework. It just trained me to make better moral, spiritual, and intellectual sense of the world, if that makes sense. And that is very actionable. So even if you're taking the very theoretical, very philosophical courses, it changes your action in the world. And so being a deeper thinker, feeling like a better human being, because the MLA program wasn't just a place to learn new information, right? It was a place of transformation for me. And I felt like it cultivated new habits of openness, flexibility, observational skills, which of course helps in my research. It really deepened an alertness to moral complexities, because sometimes when people try to simplify things, something is lost when you don't really look at the complexities of everything, and it just sharpens your reasoning faculty. So I feel like across the board, it just improved my quality of life and my ability to do everything that I do.
Yeah. One thing that I always tell students is if you have answers to all of your questions at the end of the course, that means that I have done a bad job. At the end of the course, you should have more questions, right?
Yes.
If anything, I mean, life should be not more simple at the end of the course. It should be more complex, right? Otherwise, that means that really the course is not well done. Shruti, can you talk more a little bit about your the impact of the MLA program on your professional life?
Well, so I started the program as a way to sort of reconnect with academia and to kind of figure out what field I wanted to go in, because I did my undergrad in the UK, and actually you specialize pretty soon over there. From what I understand, it's different to the US, where you have a major and a minor. So doing the MLA, I realized I was very interested in philosophy. And like Dr. Cabello was saying, by the time I got to the end, I had a lot of questions. I was like, wait, what about non-Western philosophy? What about sort of South Asian classics? And that is kind of what led me. So that sort of foundation in philosophy that I got from the course then led me to ask more questions, to look even wider into sort of the deep past of India. And so that has kind of taken me to this field. But again, as I was saying earlier, the kind of critical faculties that I've received from this training, you know, to not just consume content, but to think about the content, to think about the material, to realize there are ways of thinking about the material. That to me has been the most valuable skill, just that really skeptical mind that understands nuance and just can't really rest easy at any conclusion.
Exactly. Like one of the goal really is to ask more questions, is to be critical of everything, right? Not to take anything for granted. Like and if there's no question behind the question, I mean, something is fishy right there, right? So that's a very good definition, a very good description of the program. Tiffany, can you talk more about the impact of the program on your professional life too?
Sure. I mean, you know, being in academia, I've been working in it for 15 years now, and I'm obviously a career student, so I just didn't want to leave after my undergrad, so I stuck with it. And I didn't want to leave, already being at the university. So the MLA, being able to take these classes online, but still feeling really challenged and feeling like I was, again, in a world where I could compete with the faculty that I work with here, that I wasn't like, oh, you just have your bachelor's, so it really advanced, the research I did. I was able to present it in different ways here on campus.
Yeah.
I do Native American Lit Studies. And so, I'm teaching that class in the spring and in the fall. And without being able to really dedicate some time on my thesis, I don't think I'd be as prepared as I am for these classes now. And so, now I'm able to fully teach here on campus. And so that's a huge advancement for me, having the tag of Johns Hopkins, not bad, and so I've had job offers through other universities in the area, saying, hey, we've seen your research, we know, we've researched the MLA program. So on my signature for my emails, I have the MLA, but I did a hyperlink back to the master's program. So, my students can see what I've done. So it's, they understand the perspective I'm coming to them with. And so, I've been reached to, hey, please apply for this assistant dean's position or different things that I don't think I just wouldn't have that without the what I've learned through the MLA, the research I've been able to do, and working with Johns Hopkins in such an intimate way. It's done everything for me.
Very good points here. And Tiffany, and I want to underline also the fact that there's really a strong sense of community among alumni and current students. And you, Tiffany, have been absolutely wonderful, because every time I have a student who wants to study Native American literature, and I've had 2 in the past year, and I connected them with you, and you're like, oh, of course, I will help, and so there is really this community here that's ready to help each other. And so often also, a lot of students are actually doing exactly the same thing that you are doing, that is linking the MLA after their name to a hyperlink. A lot of people are still asking, well, what's an MLA? But we have a fantastic page that's describing exactly, what the MLA program is about. And usually, just as you said, I've heard many students who have told me, well, this is how I got job offers. Once people have read what the MLA was all about, they called me back. So it's a very good point here. We are running out of time, so I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Tiffany, Shruti, Carlos, Brian, Lisa, Florence. Thank you so much for joining. And before we say goodbye, I just want to say a quick thank you to Laura, our program director, Dr. Laura De Sisto, our program director, who's keeping the program running very smoothly. So thank you so much, Laura, for everything that you do. And also, of course, thank you very much to the whole marketing team at AAP, who's helping us putting all those events online and producing those events. Alex, Peter, Hayden, thank you so much for all the work that you do. We will make sure to publish the schedule for the upcoming events very soon. And otherwise, well, I wish you all a good evening, and we will see you very soon. Thank you so much. Bye.